Hey, how about that? Just like that, the countdown worked, and we are here. We are live, courtesy of Elysian and Spaced Us. I'm Ian Furness from Sports Radio 950 KJR, and that guy right there, if you're a Sounders fan, you know who he is. I would just say he's the best goalkeeper in the MLS. I don't care what anybody else says, and has more clean sheets than I've had beers in the last 10 years. So that's a lot. Stefan Frei, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good. Well, listen, this is, and I'll kind of introduce, I know we'll probably have a lot of new people in on this. This is, I believe, the fourth one of these type of, in a sense, a town hall that we have done with iHeart Media and courtesy of Elysian here in the Seattle area. And I started it off with Cliff Averill from the Seahawks about a month and a half ago, and we're kind of wrapping up with Steph today. And what we do is we're just going to have an open conversation, and that's the key. Have a conversation for the next 60 minutes about some of the issues going on in our country. And we encourage you, you're watching more than likely on a Facebook page, whether it's be Elysian's Facebook page or the KJR Facebook page, we encourage you to jump in and comments, questions, concerns, and interact with us. That's what it's about. Otherwise, I know Steph can talk. I can too. We do it for a living. I do it for a living. So yes, you can. I've heard you. You're the best, one of the better interviews in the league. But we encourage you to jump in as well. And Steph, I'm going to let you start because I want to ask you a question, and you fire back at me. We'll go back and forth. But I've done this now a couple times. When they came to you and said, "Hey, we want you to do a social justice and talk about the country that you're now a citizen of and everything else," and they came to you and said, "Let's do this," what went through your mind?
I was excited. I was excited to get the opportunity to do so. A bit nervous as well because it's there's a lot at stake, and as athletes or people that have platforms, you're always told to be careful what you say, and if you don't know if it's a hot topic, maybe even a non-comment, throw one of those in there. But I think it's time that people do have a comment, and they do talk about what's going on in the world, and what their opinions is on everything. So it's an opportunity for me because I need to educate myself. It's a continuous process, and what better way to do it than to sit down and talk and be open and then see if we can, make some progress.
It's funny, when they first came to me the second time and said, with Cliff Averill, it made sense. A black man in America who's making a difference and goes through things that I don't go through, that I don't understand as a middle-aged, Caucasian in this country. That made all the sense. When they came and said, "Hey, you and Stefan Frei are going to do it," I'm like, "Stefan, like two white guys? Like that's weird." But then I thought more about it, and I've got a different perspective, which I'll explain later. But I'm not sure if there's anybody, in a sense, better to do this second one with than you, because you chose to be in this country. You chose to become a citizen of this country. And for all the ills of the country that we talk about these days and all the things going on, which we'll get into, you made a conscious choice that you wanted to become a citizen of the United States of America.
Yeah, this is an American issue that we're talking about here. This is not a minority issue, black issue, or anything like that. So this is something that everybody needs to come to the table to try to find a solution for, especially the people that maybe can turn a blind eye to it, and it wouldn't bother them, and I think that's been going on for too long. And like I said, if we are going to find a real solution, it's going to take everybody. So sometimes it's uncomfortable, but really, it's a privilege that we can even sit here and say it's uncomfortable at times, right? Because for some people, it's a little bit more than just uncomfortable. So it's important that we're involved.
Well, who hasn't been uncomfortable the last few months, right? And whether it be a pandemic or certainly the things going on in our country. I'll go through because my situation it's far different than Steph's. But I was born in Seattle, grew up in Seattle, but my mother's Canadian, and our family, my sisters and I, we all, and some people that listen to the radio station might know the story, but many don't. For me, we retained our Canadian dual citizenship. I did all the way through my early 20s, and part of it was career orientated. I was doing some hockey and some different things like that, but it was, we kept that. And I remember I finally made the decision, and I had to make a decision. I wanted to make a decision, yes or no, be involved in this country, have a chance to vote, have a chance to have a say, or do I want to retain that citizenship and have the opportunity maybe to move north of the border? And I for all the issues that again, we'll probably get into a little bit later, for all those things that came up, Steph, I made the decision. I want to be, this is the country I want to live in. This is the country I grew up in. And if I'm going, I can't live here and not make a difference by not voting and not having a say and not having a conscious about what's going on. And so I did that. I said, I'm going to be, once you register to vote, you lose your rights as a dual citizen. And, there's a lot of things in Canada that are fantastic. There's a lot of things up there that aren't. I like not having to pay, an extra 25% on taxes every time I buy a coffee or what have you, right? Little things like that, but there's so much more. But that was my decision. I made that decision, raising our kids here and everything else. Mm-hmm. You made a decision that was similar, but was far more dramatic because you moved. You've been playing here for a while, but you made a decision that this is where you wanted to stay. Why was that?
Well, I'll give you the whole story because I think it's important to give it a bit of context. My family, we moved to the United States when I was just 15. I had spent my childhood there in Switzerland and loved it. Really looking back, there's a bad thing and a bad memory from back then. So it was really a good time and something I strongly identified as a Swiss citizen at the time, And fast forward a little bit, I went to high school, college in the US in Northern California. And quickly after I turned pro in 2009, I had a good rookie year. I was fortunate enough to play right away, which is very unusual as a goalkeeper. And I was on the radar of the US national team very quickly on. And for me at that point, you see athletes, especially when it comes to in soccer, I think, having a bit of a mercenary attitude, and going to play for a national team can open many doors when it comes to financial or just your overall value as an athlete. But I wasn't there. I didn't identify as an American at that point, and for me that was important. That if I was to become an American, I really needed to feel some weight behind it. And I spent some time playing in Canada. I met my wife there. She's Canadian. But then when I came back and lived in Seattle for now it's been over 7 years, especially with the presidential election that we had in 2016, it really brought that issue of, well, what is it to be American? Do I have any say in this? No, I don't. I'm not American. But those feelings came forward again, and I quickly realized that, hey, as much as I loved my time in Switzerland, like I said, I had actually spent half of my life outside of Switzerland at that point. And so quickly I realized that this has all shaped me who I am. And I have a lot to thank for my time in North America as well. And so it became an issue of I really wanted to come to the table and have some say. And I didn't feel like I could do that as a non-American citizen. So that became my decision. Obviously, at that point, already a deeply divided country, but even more so an opportunity to show what I think it means to be a good American citizen.
It's I think that to have an investment in it, if nothing else, it's hard. I have a hard time. I think in anything in life, right? You have a hard time complaining about something or worrying about something, but not having a stake in it, not having a say in it. However big or little the voice is, and that debate. I studied poli-sci in college. The debate. I remember having a professor once tell me that, it's not worth ever voting. And that stuck with me for a while. It's a guy that I really respected in my major and said, hey, your voice doesn't matter. But his point was you can do so much more, whether it's working on a campaign or what have you, or investing your time in the community and things like that. But at the same token, if you didn't invest that one vote, if you didn't invest that one say, do you really have a context? Or do you really have I guess in a sense, do you really have a vested interest in it? And probably the answer is no. And we've seen that. We saw that. Boy, we saw that this year more than ever. We're counting votes, aren't we? This was crazy. We're counting votes by the ones and the twos. And the
isn't that maybe that's what's needed, right? Because for the longest time, I think in this country, people were wondering, well, does my vote truly count? Does it really matter? I think this election cycle has shown that it does. So maybe it's a good thing because isn't that part of democracy, right? That you need to feel like your vote counts, and it truly did this year, I think.
How is it different from Europe? I mean, you've spent, grew up, you were a younger man when you left, a teenager when you left, but I mean, it's,
Yeah.
and because I think people here, there is a thought right now with everything we've been through with the social issues in our country, and the BLM movement and things that, that have become kind of front and center and in many ways uncomfortable. I think I think there's probably some that think, boy, it would be better on the other side, or it would be better here or better there. How different is it, and how is it better here in your mind? Because I know why I think it isn't, but I don't have a context of having lived somewhere else. I've lived in other states, but I haven't lived elsewhere outside of visiting relatives north of the border. But how is it different and better here?
I think maybe I'm going to go on a branch here, but I think the U.S. is very similar to how soccer is in the U.S. It's very young. And sometimes what we try to do with soccer in this country is we try to sidestep hundreds of years of history and of growing the sport and to getting to where we want to be. That's what happened with leagues all over in Europe, and that doesn't come for free. It comes with growing pains, but it adds something to it. And I think maybe that's the same in the U.S. The U.S. is relatively, young country, if you will, and we really have lofty goals as to what we want to aspire to be, but you can't just say this is what we want to be, and then you arrive there. It really has to. You have to go through some really difficult steps. Things where people have to maybe make themselves vulnerable. And put themselves out there, help each other out, not be selfish, and grow together as a country. And like I said, I think from the very early stage, we as Americans claimed really lofty goals. Unfortunately, we've kind of lost sight, I think, of how much work we need to put into to make sure we get there. And hopefully, with the recent uproar of social justice being needed, maybe we can make some strides towards that.
I like the soccer analogy, by the way. I'm more on this. By the way, you can chime in if you want to. There's a chat part there, and we'll see those as they come in with our producer. Doug's kind of keeping an eye on that for us. So if there's anything you want to ask or fire away, comments, questions, concerns, differences of opinion, those are all welcome here today. Please. So make sure you get those into us as well. The soccer analogy is interesting, because first of all, I'm sure there's a lot of Sounders fans going, expand on that. That's probably not the forum for it today, but that's true. I mean, do you take a shortcut along the way? I think that's what you're kind of insinuating, right? Like, are there shortcuts? There are no shortcuts in life. There are no shortcuts, really, period, right? I mean, I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, I mean, just to take it a layer even further down is, in the beginning of the season when we set our goals, you can't just sit there and say, "Oh, we want to win a trophy," because everybody says that. Everybody wants to win a trophy. You have to really focus on the process, right? What are you willing to put into it? And again, to look at it in a big picture, in this country, it's very difficult because it's just the sheer size and the population. There's going to be so many different opinions, and for us to come together is gonna take a lot. And you're never going to be able to make it right for everybody. I get that, but you really have to make sure that the fundamentals are right for everybody. And I think that's what we're seeing. Again, for me at least, social justice. These are at times basic human rights. And if we have high aspirations, we got to make sure that those are right for everybody.
We are live on the Legion Brewing and Facebook and Twitter for all of the above, including Sports Radio 950 KGR, the Legion Brewing Facebook and Twitter as well. Fire away if you have any questions. I think, and I want to get into a little bit of what our impressions were for both of us, maybe in terms of what happened even just a few months ago here in our city, in our community in Seattle and across the country as well. But one of the things that's great about sports is that it's the great equalizer, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you look like or where you're from or what your background was. When you go into a locker room or you're onto a field, and it's all the same. For me, if I'm interviewing somebody, I don't look at them as saying it's this guy or that guy or this is the athlete. We're talking to the athlete. But for you, it's even deeper than that. And I'm not sure, is there a bigger melting pot in sports than a soccer locker room? I think I reached out to one of your PR guys. I think it's 14 different nationalities are represented in the Sounders locker room. I mean, I mean, baseball maybe has, I don't think baseball even has that, because I don't think there's that many countries that are represented in the major leagues. I mean, that 14 different countries just in a Sounders locker room. So you had to learn early on, like you probably don't look at somebody and say, that's a black guy, that's an Asian guy, that's a Latino, that's an American, Caucasian guy. You can't do that.
No, I mean, I've had teammates from all over. I've had teammates from Latvia, from Russia, from South Korea, from Brazil, from all over the world. So I think it's a nice thing because we all want to come together. There's two things, right, in terms of how the outside looks at us, and also how we look at each other as teammates. And first, we all realize we're there for a reason, and then we want to win together. And so all those parameters are set up right away. You're pushing in the same direction, and I think it already possibly becomes harder to look at silly things of, well, what color is that guy, or what religion is this person, what is his sexual preference, those things all, we're all pulling in the same direction. That's what we're here for, and that's what matters. And then the beauty of it too is that you have to find a way together somehow, right? There's barriers with language, for example, and then there's you're talking about culture as well. So it's a beautiful thing because I have to learn a little bit of Spanish. The Spanish speaker has to learn a little bit of English. We have the South Korean coming in with a little bit of English. We try to make him welcome, and make sure we're all on the same page. But at the same time, you also you learn to be open to each other, and that's where that cultural thing comes into play. You realize how people behave, what makes them tick, what they like, what they don't like, what they respond to, what they don't respond to. It's almost like a cultural experiment, if you will. And I love that part of my, I don't even want to call it a job, of what I get to do on a daily basis. That's one of my favorite parts. Is just to have a chance to be able to pull in the same direction with people from all over the planet.
I wonder if we've learned, you as an athlete, you don't have a choice in a sense. I mean, when I say you don't have a choice, you as an athlete, you're put into that mix. Like and force is too strong a word, but you're placed into a room, a work environment, a situation in which, like you just said, you can't worry what someone's sexual preference is. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the MLS might have had the first openly homosexual player, right, in pro sports a few years ago, right? I mean, which is awesome. And which, in WNBA, we just had two icons in Seattle sports, and Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird announced that they were engaged. And I was telling somebody the other day, Steph, I said, when that story came out, we were talking about it. I work over at the TV station too. We're talking about it, and it was brought up, and I said, "Why is that a story?" Like I thought, first of all, I thought they were already married, and in our state and county, that's fine. That's already been accepted. I thought they were married, and then I thought, well, good. It's a cool story in the sense that they are a power couple, and they've done so much for social justice, and they've done so much for everything out there. But it didn't even resonate with me because that's how far down the road we are in some ways. And yet that happens, but I fast forward, or I backtrack a little bit to March and April and what happened in our country, across the country. And I don't think I always thought I was open-minded. I always thought I was a guy that, growing up in Seattle, I went to a high school that was not all, guys that looked like me by any means. And I always thought I was pretty open-minded and had an understanding. And then I realized, I think like a lot of us across the country, we had no understanding what especially Black people in our country were going through. Guys like Cliff Averill have helped me out with that. We've done some stuff on the radio with it. I had no idea. We all get stressed when we get pulled over by the police. I mean, usually because you're going too fast, or you blow a stop sign, or you do something wrong. But I never had that other fear in my back of my head that I'll never feel, but I hopefully have another understanding for right now, right? Like I have a better understanding for what people go through. But for so many in your locker room, there's people in your locker room that probably have that same fear if they get pulled over. or if they're walking down the street and someone looks at them, or they make a decent living. Can you live in this neighborhood? I mean, you probably have had those conversations with teammates over the years.
Well, that's the crazy thing, because we haven't really. But what has happened over the past few months has brought some of those things to the forefront, and it's forced us in a locker room to have discussions about things like this. Because before we were, I don't want to say oblivious, but we were happily going after our team goals. Pulling in the same direction and not really paying attention to other things.
Just like living in a bubble, in a sense, like kind of like that sports bubble. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, haven't we all? That's the crazy thing, right? Because I feel like it's not that it's gotten worse over the last few months. It's been like that for a while. That's the harsh realization that I'm coming to, and being told, is that it's been going like this for a long time. I don't know what it is. Is that maybe more things are getting caught on video and being put out there straight in your face. Very, very disturbing things to see. Maybe this year also has something to do with it. People are cooped up at home, are frustrated. Emotions are a little bit out of whack, and tend to see things like that. It just pushes you over the edge. But either way, I'm happy that finally lots of people that have chosen, me included, to turn a blind eye for a long, long time are now being like rattled, awakened to be like, hey, you need to do something about this. And then, have I done something about it? I've been trying to be involved. I haven't gone and changed, legislative or anything like that. I haven't been able to achieve much, if you will, like that. But I've had conversations. I've tried to raise awareness. I've tried to be involved and educate myself. That's the one thing. The first thing I thought about this was, what's my place as a white male athlete, grown up with privilege? What's my place in this? But the thing that I wanted to make sure is that I have a place, and I do play a part. I do not want to just sit on the outside and saying, yeah, I got your back if you need me over here, because that's just not going to do it anymore.
That's a great way to put it. What's my place? What's my role? What is it? What am I? And I'll be honest with you, Steph, I struggle with that almost daily. I try, and we have a forum on the radio and on television, and an opportunity to do some charitable work, and we try to. I've always tried to do. Hey, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to use that platform. I'm going to use that podium. I'm going to use it for not just entertaining people to talk about sports or what have you, but for other things, which I think I've always succeeded at doing. And yet then there's this, the last few months kind of give me an empty feeling of I haven't done enough. And as you said, what is the next step? And I think that's what we're all looking for right now, is like, what is that next step? And, they'll say, well, silence is the worst things. Well, sure. But saying the wrong thing can be bad as well. I mean, I think we're Absolutely. All kind of, aren't we all kind of worried about that too? I'm curious. It's interesting you guys are starting to have those conversations, because obviously they had that in the NBA this year. They had it in the NBA, the NHL both sat out games, right? And MLS was in a bubble and had issues going on. I mean, the role of sports in the world we live in the United States right now, that role of sports is one that does have a platform, and it does have that opportunity. But what is the problem? Like, what is, like, if you were to pinpoint it right now, because I can't, like, what the biggest problem is? Is it not understanding what, especially people of color in our country, going through? Is that problem? Is that the number one problem we have right now? I'm asking you a question that I don't know the answer to, by the way.
Yeah, so. I don't have the answer to it either, so I'm just going to brainstorm on the spot with you. But I'm going to give the general population a bit more credit and say we're not that dumb. I think by now we understand that certain minorities have the odds stacked against them, and they're going through way more than us white people have to. I'm going to say that. The question becomes, why are we okay with that? And that's where I'm struggling to find an answer. Is it out of fear? For example, I'll give you a stupid example, but we were wearing Black Lives Matter shirts as a collective. We decided we wanted to buy them ourselves, not even have the front office involved, but we wanted to make a statement as players that this is what we stood for, and we did that. And pictures were coming out, and I realized that on my platform, I have people follow me that are on both sides of this. Some that are all the way behind that, and others that responded with, but all lives matter. And that's my example is. Black Lives Matter doesn't say that other lives don't matter.
Right.
So it's an immediate defensive response. And why is it a defensive response? You're not having to surrender certain rights to give them to Black people. What we're wanting is equality. That the privileges and not privileges, but the rights, the very basic human rights that you're given, that others that have not been given them are also given those. So that's what I struggle to find an answer. Why do some people, are they afraid of equality? Are they still oblivious that there is inequality? I don't think so. I really don't think so. But I don't have the answer to it either.
I want to come back to the Black Lives Matter T-shirts for a second, because I'm glad you brought that up, because you guys were the first to come back, on the first sport to return. And even though you're playing at 4 a.m. Pacific time, whatever it was, that one game, which was brutal for us to get up for. But I want to come back to those shirts. We do have a question. I got to put the glasses on, Steph. I'm an old guy here. Elisa on Facebook. The sport bubbles of the WNBA, NBA, and MLS, did they help with any of your opinions? Did it make you more socially active? I think it's to take it a step further from Elisa, and thank you. What was happening? How much do you guys pay attention to other leagues? I'm pretty sure obviously the NHL paid attention to the NBA. The NBA was kind of at the forefront. The WNBA, I don't want to not give them credit. They were there as well. But the NBA, especially with the Milwaukee Bucks taking the stand that they did. I can't even fathom what was going on in a locker room. Not ever been in a locker room past high school. I can't imagine what was going on in a locker room where that decision was made not to take the floor. The other teams out there, they obviously weren't in on it. Everything was going on there. How much were you guys as a group, as a team, and I think you have great leadership, I believe, with Brian Schmetzer, your coach. How much was being paid attention to what was going on elsewhere around sports?
Well, in particular, that Milwaukee situation you're describing there with the NBA, that was a big deal for us, because we were actually scheduled to have a game in LA at the time against the LA Galaxy, and so
right.
We saw what had happened before with another senseless murder, and then I think the Tuesday evening was when an assailant went from, I think, across states, and defended himself, so he claims, and killed, I think, 2 more people. I think it was a lot of violence, and that kind of came out the next morning. And the next morning is when we were hopping on a plane to go to LA. So we were on the plane as these things were unfolding or coming out. And once we landed is also when we kind of heard of what was going on in the NBA. And it was on the fly. It was literally WhatsApp between players going, hey, how do we feel about this? What's going on? How do you feel about it? Some people are like, yeah, we're gonna have to address this, and others are like, we're addressing it now, and quickly it went from okay, you're having a pregame meal to we're having a pregame talk on whether this game is even happening or not. And so thankfully, I have to say, in terms of the coaching staff, they were also very, 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 very supportive. They said, this is there's things happening in the world that are bigger than sports, and you have a platform, and so it's important that you guys realize what platform you have, and also that you're getting involved in whatever way you want to. And so we had already traveled down, and we decided that we did not want to play. It was there was too many crazy things happening in the world that needed to be paid attention to by people, instead of us almost like a little clown in a circus, like, look at me, don't worry about the other stuff. That's kind of what I didn't want to be. I understand that we serve as a distraction as athletes from people that and their difficult lives that they have on a daily basis, but I did not want to be a distraction for something that needed to be paid attention to. And so we flew home and without the game, and had to postpone and play that game another day.
I remember that, and it was. I think what we're learning we're learning these, especially now with the pandemic, and kind of having some issues with the return to play, especially, college football, as you know, is huge in this country, and having, games be postponed and canceled. They're a great source of, as you said, distraction, entertainment. People, I mean, we live for college football and the NFL in the fall in this country, and we're kind of all on pins and needles and hoping your favorite team's game doesn't get canceled and you get to see it and be entertained. Nothing would raise more awareness than, when teams don't play a game. And in this case, it was by choice. And I mean, I think it was really effective. I was probably as proud of anything of the NHL, which is about as Caucasian-driven a league as there is in all of sports. When they took that stand, they did as well, specifically with Vancouver and Las Vegas. I thought it was just, and seeing the players stand there and guys that literally will drop the gloves and throw fists with each other and, standing, arm in arm and in unity. It was great. To go back, the Black Lives Matters t-shirt, how much for us in sports radio, I'll take people behind the curtain for a second, because you talk about distractions. And we walk a fine line, even during the presidential race. We walk a fine line. I mean, we go on the air on Wednesday, and obviously nobody knew what was going on, but there were news conferences and breaking news, and here's an updated vote from Pennsylvania or Nevada or Arizona. And we struggled mightily with it, because what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to give people that news as it happens? Are we supposed to cut in, if and when someone calls a victory for, whether it be the incumbent or the challenger? What were we supposed to do? And we struggled with that quite a bit. We made the decision that if that did happen, we would let people know, but we wouldn't go minute by minute, because people do come to us for a distraction. They want to listen to sports radio for a reason. If they wanted that other information, they're going to a news talk station or going to the NPR station or what have you. They came to us for a different reason. So we made the conscious effort that, yes, we would deal with it if it was there, but not minute by minute. You guys had so many things going on in addition to trying to play soccer and try to challenge and first of all, retain your championship and defend your title. Go down and do what you do best as an organization, and that's win tournaments. I mean, nobody wins tournaments better than the Sounders since they came into this existence, over a decade ago, right? I mean, 12 years ago, you just win tournaments. So we all kind of figured you'd win the MLS's back tournament, because that's what you guys do most of the time. But in the midst of all of that and getting ready and trying to stay healthy and getting tested, this is all going on. And the Black Lives Matter t-shirt, I was always curious, because that was kind of a lightning rod around the country. You mentioned it. A lot of people want to say all lives matter, or they want to, maybe they have an issue with some of the leadership with the Black Lives Matter movement. So while people may agree with most, not all, when they wear the shirt, how did that conversation go on in your locker room and with your teammates, and your coach wore the t-shirt as well? How did that conversation take place? Because nothing in life is 100%. There's no way you had 100% buy-in for people to wear that t-shirt.
Yeah, it's another thing, right, that we kind of touched on before, that multicultural makeup of a locker room, and it's a beauty. But in an issue like this, you also have to describe to your international squad that this is a worthy cause, even though it could be perceived as something that's simply going on in the US, right? I mean, these other players might be going back to their countries at some point, and then so why should they care about this? In fact, this could potentially even hamper them making their money, their future contract negotiations, whatever you may want to call it. So it was a delicate topic, for sure. But I think we realized altogether that it didn't really matter if it mattered to one person. That would be enough, because maybe not the right analogy, but when you say that you're only as strong as your weakest link, that shows, that saying is meant to show that you all have to pull together at all times, and if one of them breaks or one of them has a struggle, you got to bring him back in, and you got to make sure we go together. And I think that applied there a little bit too, is that we had a couple people and that were directly affected. You had a couple people who were strong, had strong feelings about it. You had some who could care less, But ultimately, we saw that some people were affected, and that's all that mattered. One thing I want to say to that too is that I was brought up. I was very lucky when I went to University of California, Berkeley. We did towards the end of my time there. We did interviews to get people prepared how to act in interviews. And one thing that was always said, and it was there's no shame in saying no comment. And I've been thinking about that a lot in the last year or so, because I think we've grown from that. We have to have grown from that. No comment is a comment. Standing by idly on the side is at the very best means you are not aware of something, but it still is a comment, if you will. Do you know what I mean? So it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And yes, I get you too. You have people that you represent besides yourself and your family. So do I. But at the same time, I think this was something that most of us in the locker room felt strongly about, and that's why the statement was made.
The endorsements and interesting. I mean, I'll take it a step further. It's endorsements. I mean, athletes are able to make a salary, and if you're at a certain level, a good comfortable living. But almost, and in our business is the same way. Actually, in radio is almost exactly the same, in a sense that you enhance your salary, your income, through endorsements with the companies that put their name behind you as an individual. And in the case of, the top players in your league and by market, guys have opportunities to make, money on the side with companies. I mean, I know one company that has dropped a Seahawk player because of his stance on social issues, which I find I find repulsive. I mean, and I would think you'd want someone that is out front and is outspoken and is for what really I think the majority of the people in our country think is right. And if nothing else, to make it overly simplified, it's equal rights, right? But you do run a risk, like you mentioned. Even a foreign player wearing a BLM shirt, there's guys that are going to go back home and maybe ostracized for that, maybe losing income. Their families may have issues. I mean, it did take some fortitude to probably put those T-shirts on for some guys.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, that sometimes in that LA game that we decided not to play in, for example, is we saw what the NBA was doing, or at least with one game, what was the result of that. And then as we were discussing what we wanted to do, some questions came up. Well, what is the rest of the league doing? And then we kind of were thinking, should we take that into consideration? But after going back and forth, we're like, it's time not to be a follower. It's time to be a leader. We don't care what everybody else is going to do, because it's going to be easy to follow. Once 8-9 teams decide, oh, you know what, we're not going to play, it's easy to be the 10th team to say, oh, by the way, we're not going to play either. I was really proud of us to say, we're not doing it. I don't care what the other teams are doing. We're not doing it, because that has a lot of value to it, because it's obviously riskier. Like you said, like we're talking about, there's uncertainties of how do other people perceive this action, right? For a sports team or for a big organization, it's always easy to follow in the end when something is kind of moving in a certain direction. If you can almost feel the general public, oh, are they okay with this? All right, yeah, we're forward as well. That's cool. I didn't want our team to be like that, and so I'm very proud of the guys for deciding, hey, we don't really know what the repercussions are of this move, but we're feeling strongly about it.
I think you're lucky too, in the sense you are an organization that is forward thinking. I mean, yep. I mean, Brian Schmetzer and Adrian grew up in this area. They understand the area. I was, you're new here, but you're as much a fabric of the community because of, what you've accomplished on and off the field here as anybody. So you have truly a vested interest in Seattle. I was heartbroken as someone who, I grew up here, moved away because of the nature of our job is kind of like yours. Sometimes you got to move, sometimes you go places, but I came back home, and this is home. And I was devastated watching on a nightly basis what was happening in our city, and seeing businesses that were just trying to hold on for dear life.
during a pandemic.
During a pandemic, and having the looting and the things that took place, and I mean, and to this day, it's heartbreaking to see boarded up downtown's Seattle boarded up. South Lake Union last week was boarded up. They're boarding it up on Thursday, Friday, getting ready for maybe an announcement on Saturday as to who would win the presidential race. And that's heartbreaking, Steph. I mean, I know you love this town too. It's heartbreaking to see that right now. I'm hoping the worst is over, and I'm hoping we've opened our eyes and understand that violence won't solve anything. But boy, it's been a tough go the last few months, not just because of a pandemic.
So yeah, absolutely. And I have to give a shout out to the Sounders Relief Fund that Ray Foundation kind of pivoted once the pandemic kind of hit, and made a Sounders Relief Fund to try to help small businesses. I was very fortunate to be able to kind of be part of the committee and get a little bit of insight on how these things work. How do we raise funds? How do we dish out funds? How do we make sure it's evenly dispersed? But did a heck of a job to try to get some of these people, individuals, and small businesses through this pandemic and this difficult time. But what I want to say is maybe this is to kind of wrap all those things together. When people say, "Hey, you play your soccer and shut up," or dribble your ball, as they told LeBron. I think it's even more important right now to speak when you have these platforms, because this is such a polarized country. It's black or white. There's no in between kind of gray area, it seems, and people feel attacked right away when you try to discuss certain things. What sports may give you is a common ground, a common love, right? People follow me because they love soccer. They might like me here and there too, who knows? But they like soccer, and I like soccer. We love soccer together. So maybe there's room for a little difference in opinion, but we can still be civilized. And maybe that's the beginning of coming together. If I'm going to keep talking about it, and I love it when people talk back to me, and we can have actually some kind of constructive dialogue going. But maybe that is a platform where we're sharing something that we both love, and that is the reason why we can actually be civil around each other.
Well, I think well, I mean, when we get back to that point of having fans in the stands, when we get to that point again and we see that, I mean, how often do you see that? You just visualize it, think about it. I mean, when your team scores, or your team hits a home run, or your team, wins in PKs, or whatever it might be, you're hugging and high-fiving the guy next to you or the woman next to you. You're not thinking what he or she looks like.
Absolutely.
I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm looking over. I'm not saying, no, different. I don't agree with that person politically, or he's a different skin color of me, or has a different sexual. No, you don't think that. That is like, that's why sports, I mentioned at the start, like your locker room, but even as a fan base, it's the great melting pot. We talk to Sounder, Seahawk, Mariner, Husky, Cougar fans every day, and if you're on the same, if that's your team, you're not thinking, "Hey, that guy's wearing my gear but I don't like him because of this." I don't think we need to get back to that point. I want to. When we talked a couple weeks ago, I don't know if this is true, and maybe I'm wrong, and people can chime in. We got a couple more questions we'll get to in a second, including we'll get a soccer question in for him too. But I feel like there's like this collective sigh of relief in the last 5 days because of what the results of the election were. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm not trying to make that statement in a sense, but maybe that's part of it. Maybe there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, because if we're being honest with ourselves, the last 4 years were filled with a lot of hate coming out of Washington, D.C., and so maybe we are going to have a little bit of a breath of a fresh air and a little bit more inclusive administration and country coming our way.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think, I even in myself, I'm not doing the doomsday scrolling on my Twitter feed and bracing to see what else new is going on, divisive rhetoric that's being spewed right now. So, I mean, regardless of who would have been in power, I think a very difficult year to guide a country through. But it's one where you needed someone to be able to bring people together. I think the coronavirus is, to me, it became such a divisive thing, and yet it should have never been a divisive thing. I actually was hoping it would be something that would bring us together.
Yeah.
We need to pull through this together. Black,
Steph, how
brown,
amazing, how amazing is that? Like that, like think about that, what you just said.
yeah.
Like you have something, a global pandemic, and just even if we just centralize it to our country, a pandemic in our country that everyone should be concerned about, worried about, taking precautions for. If nothing else, that should be something we're all on the same page with. And yet, and we weren't.
I joke to my wife about this all the time. I tell her, world peace will occur when aliens come and we have a common enemy finally. But maybe the pandemic was in a way, right? This is a common enemy of us humans, and I think we completely missed the ball on that. It would have been a huge opportunity for us to have to work together and then realize, all these all these the stigma, all these things that I think other people of other color or of other religion or wherever they're from, culture, they're all made up. They're deep down, they're humans that are trying to survive, make a better place for themselves and their families, laugh occasionally, cry when they need to. Oh wow, they're exactly the same as I am, whoever they is. So I think it was a missed opportunity, unfortunately, and I think it would have needed a good leader that would have brought us together, but we had a leader who was on top of that this divisive one, I would argue.
Well, I think that's, no matter who you voted for, you had a divisive element coming out of Washington D.C. and when you're told that something's not real, that yet you see 250,000 people have died from, and millions of people have been infected by, and listen, to various degrees. I mean, chances are we all know somebody who has been tested positive for the coronavirus, and many have a minor cold or no symptoms whatsoever, but others end up being hospitalized. I have someone I went to college with is just getting out of the hospital right now. I've known other people that weren't infected by it, but it's real. To try to deny that it was real, and you're right. I'm not sure I'll be honest, I'm not sure in the prior administration well, I guess it's still the current administration, but if aliens did land on this earth, I think there might be those that would deny it as well. That might still happen. We might still be divided in that regard, Steph.
Here's the crazy thing. I think retrospectively, if you're going into a year of election, having a pandemic come your way is almost a blessing in disguise, because if you handle that thing somewhat properly, I think it would be a no-brainer as to who the people would have chosen to lead this country for the next 4 years. It wasn't just it screwed up his re-election. I think it was a massive opportunity for him, and like I said, I think it needed empathy. It needed selfishness to go out the window. It was ample opportunity to bring people together, and then to have those people realize later who brought them together. That would have helped them tremendously, but I think they missed the ball on that.
And it's hard because, I think we get upset, and listen, we all worry about it. I just mentioned the, stuff getting boarded up. I mean, we see an uptick in the cases. There's a grave concern that there could be, some pulling back of some of the openings around our country. There already have been, our state, knock on wood, we haven't got to that point yet. I'm sure that's being considered out of Olympia, and, people lost their jobs or people were laid off. And, restaurant workers are barely able to get back into work, for example, those in the service industry and so forth, hair salons and, nail salons, people that are just trying to make a living. And we're all hoping it doesn't go back to that way. And that's where it got political at times too, right? It's people were saying, hey, why is this open in this part of the country, but not here? So you go back and forth. We did need a unifying force. We didn't get that. And that's unfortunate, but it feels like the last week there's been a collective sigh of relief. And by the majority of the country, well, the majority of the country did speak. Whether you want to look electoral college or if you want to just look popular vote, the majority of the country spoke. It's a win-win all the way around, but that still means you have 70+ million people that are not happy either. But still, the majority of the country did speak.
Yeah, I would also say, just on top of that, is that I'm exceptionally proud of the way Washingtonians have handled the coronavirus. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but in the very beginning, we were the ground zero,
Yes, we were.
within
Yep.
in Kirkland or Bellevue, where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers weren't looking good at all, in terms of available beds and the trajectory that we were on. And I think we moved very quickly and concisely. Like, I was very proud of the way everybody came together to get to kind of reverse that trend and get it stabilized. And I understand that now. It's been for quite a while, and people are getting frustrated, and they're over it. But I don't think there's anybody that was like, oh God, thankfully now, finally now we can wear our masks. Nobody loves wearing a mask, but you have to look at it in a different way. You have to look at, you love that restaurant. You want to make sure that your friends that work at that restaurant survive. If the answer is no, then there's something wrong with you. But the answer should be yes, and then wearing the damn mask isn't going to be that difficult if you look at it that way.
Yeah, the guy that works at the grocery store checks you out when you're buying your groceries.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it's basically it's not just common sense. It's also human decency to not take yourself aside. You're protecting other people in that regard.
Yeah, and what we're talking about with social justice. Maybe I'm going to go a little dark here, but it's been frustrating to see that. I think, unfortunately, one of the human flaws is selfishness.
Yep.
And that the moment that someone sacrifices themselves and says, you know what, I will not take this opportunity to be selfish, and I will do something for the greater good. There's 10, 15 people waiting to swallow up that little space that person just provided. That's been disheartening for me this year, to see that selfishness in human nature. And I hope that we can get away from that. I don't know how, but everybody has to do their little part. And collectively, hopefully we can achieve some goals, whether it means getting out of this pandemic, making some meaningful strides towards social justice, and take some pride in that, hey, we stood for something. We made some sacrifices here and there, and something good came from it. Hey, there is a clear path to a better place for everybody.
Maybe positive peer pressure exists out there, right? Maybe some positive peer pressure does happen. I would echo the sentiments. Let's wrap up the main focus in a second, but we'll give people just a quick little nugget, because there is a question here from Jeff, I believe, and it's a soccer question. It's almost like we're dating you. Like how old are you now, fella? Like, all right, how many more years do you plan on playing? Are you? I feel like you just started. You've only been. How long you've been here? 7 years? Is that what you said?
7 years, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man, they went through like They went through 3 keepers in 3 years, I think, after Casey retired. But yeah, I mean, you're not going anywhere, are you?
I've been blessed, because athletes, their career can be out like this. I've had a very scary experience. 4 years into my career in Toronto, where I had a really bad leg fracture, and my tib fib split and ligaments ripped off, and I had to learn how to walk and run again. It was pretty scary. So I know that anything can happen, but that's why I'm very blessed. I've been able to play professionally for 12 years. Been here for 7. I love this place. I love Seattle. I love the people. I love the Sounders. And having grown up in Europe, it was always something special when a player was able to stay with the club for more than 10 years. They got their testimonial. It was kind of like an honorary game for the service and the loyalty to the club. And most of my favorite players were exactly those. And so I have a soft spot for that. I would love to stay with this club for a long, long time. My wife and my family are settled here. We love it here. Maybe, talk to the GM, put in a good word for me, and hopefully I can stay here some longer.
Hey, Garth, where are you, fella? Garth, you listening? I think not only have you excelled on the field, but I think that the differences that you have and feel like you're really going to make off the field come into play too. And I mean, you're, like I said, you're a fabric of the community. That's why I like this franchise. It feels as if, I was just talking to our guy Jackson Phelps, who does the pre and post game for our radio broadcast here. who produces our afternoon show. I was just talking to him a moment ago about Jordan Morris. And for those who missed, Jordan and Nicholas Lodeiro are both up for the Player of the Year in the MLS, which I feel like that's going to split some votes, by the way, which hopefully people, but nevertheless, both very deserving. But as I saw that, we were talking about Jordan and homegrown guy, but we've seen, DeAndre Yedlin left here, right? I mean, guys will leave, but it feels like he's a guy that's going to stay here. You feel like you're a guy that's going to stay here. And I think as sports fans in Seattle, we've been jilted a few times by guys leaving. Sean Kemp wanted to leave. Griffey wanted to leave. A-Rod left. Gary Payton wanted to leave at some point. So guys have wanted to leave over the years. We want guys to stay. You're one of us now. You got to stick around. So we got to talk to. I'm sure if Garth and Schmitz have their way, that'll be no problem. But you guys feel like you have a core group of guys here that feels like they're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, it's nice when players want to stay here, right? Unfortunately, in soccer, again, to go kind of back to where we started, is that this sport is still kind of young in this country, and it's grown tremendously. It gives you opportunities to make history, which we've done with this club, which is amazing. But the pay is not exactly the same as you would find in a lot of other leagues in the world. So there's limited amounts of time that you can make a living off of this, and you have to maximize that and have to set yourself and your family up for a good future. But there's something romantic about a player who maybe makes some concessions in that aspect because he finds that he has a strong connection with the fans or with the city, and wants to see out his time.
Plus, people like your artwork here too, I think, so that helps too, right? Hey,
I appreciate it.
Is there a better place? Is there a better place to be an artist in this area either, right?
Oh, I love it. When it's overcast and raining outside, and you get a coffee and you head into the studio, it's an amazing time to paint.
Probably a great way to clear the head as well. We'll wrap it up with this. Just a quick final thought from you on the hour and where we are, and I'll tee it up with this. You want to stay here for a long time. We hope you stay here for a long time. But like when you go out on a limb, as you are doing today, this hour, that's a risk. It's a risk reward, but the reward, you don't know what the reward is, but no comment, as you mentioned, shouldn't be said anymore.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think you have to be true to yourself. You're the one that has to go to bed at night and be able to be satisfied with whatever decisions you've made. If I'm going to sit here and say I've put that person down and this person down, and that helped me on an individual level, I know that's not going to make me sleep well at night. So I think it's important that people are true to themselves. Again, as athletes, we are human beings too. Please do not forget that. So when we are voicing our opinions, they're the same opinions that you guys have. So if you tell me to shut up and dribble, I can say stop talking and paint your walls as a painter, or bake your bread as a baker. Everybody has a job, but everybody also has feelings. Everybody's a human. So I try to do my part in expressing mine in the most respectful way possible, in the most constructive way possible. But I'm always happy to chat and learn something new from someone else. So if you see me around, we can even do it socially distant. Say hello. I don't bite, and I would love to chat with everybody.
You're a pretty good dribbler, right? You got good footwork for a keeper. I've seen that. So they say shut up and dribble. You say, hey, you know what? I'm pretty good. I'm not bad. Most goalkeepers want to be a striker anyway. So at that point, I'll wrap it up my side. This has been enlightening for me. I really appreciate the conversation. For me, Stefan, it's been a lot of fun. It was fun doing it with Cliff, fun doing it with you, different viewpoints. I think even, a middle-aged white guy like me over the last few months, I feel like I've had my eyes opened and my heart and my brain opened, and just kind of feel like I'm a little bit more, not just knowledgeable, but hopefully I have a little more empathy and understand that, there's a lot of challenges out there, especially if you don't look like me or if you're not from this country. So hopefully we all are better at listening, better at understanding, and better at figuring out how we can make this country a better place. But thank you so much. Best of luck. I don't know what you're going to do for 2 weeks. Paint, relax, have a coffee. You guys don't start for the playoffs until the 24th, so you got a little ways.
Yeah, try to stay healthy, but yeah, train, get ready. But well said on everything that you just said there, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you very much. Big thanks to Elysian as well, and Elysian Space Dust, also Sports Radio 950 KJR and iHeart Media, because I'll tell you right now, not easy. This is for Elysian and anybody else putting themselves out there. We appreciate them doing that, having an important conversation, and many of you watching live, some of you watching it right now, watching it on tape as well. So we thank you for joining us. Best of luck in the playoffs. Let's defend that title, and maybe just maybe after that title is defended, gets a vaccine or something, have a real parade one more time. So thanks, Steph. Take care.
Sounds good. Take care.